Welcome back, everyone, to UBG Bytes. Today, we're taking a closer look at how Apple handles app security across their gear, iOS, macOS, the whole lot. We've been looking at their platform security docs, trying to map out the defenses they use to keep things secure from apps. For us, as testers and researchers, understanding the stack is key to finding where the interesting challenges and maybe the opportunities lie.
Exactly. Apple describes it as the software and services for a safe app ecosystem, basically letting apps run without wrecking the system's integrity. They cover the basics, code signing, and then specifics for iOS, macOS, even visionOS.
Right, so let's get into those basics. What are the sort of foundational controls you see everywhere?
Sandboxing. That's really the bedrock. It restricts what third-party apps can do. Each one gets its own unique home directory, totally random. It can't just poke around in other apps' files or mess with system settings.
Okay, so it's containerized. Access outside its little box has to go through specific system services.
Precisely. Only via explicit system services. It forces interactions through controlled pathways, which, really shapes where you'd look for bugs.
Makes sense. So you're looking at those services, those interaction points, rather than just trying to break out of the box directly.
Yeah, or finding flaws in the sandbox profile itself. Then there's mandatory code signing. This is huge for iOS, iPadOS, visionOS.
The requirement that all code has to be signed with an Apple certificate.
Yep. Every single executable bit. It proves the app is from a known developer and hasn't been tampered with. Extends that chain of trust. macOS is a bit different, of course. It's designed to run, well, pretty much anything. So it needs extra layers. We'll get to that.
Got it. Origin and integrity checked. But even if an app is signed, its permissions are still limited, right?
Absolutely. That's done using signed entitlements. Think of them as capability declarations baked into the signature. They control access to user data, system features like location or contacts. And crucially, the app cannot change these later. They're fixed.
Okay, so if an app wants your photos, it needs that entitlement signed in from the start. Seems like a good place to look for overly broad permissions, maybe?
Could be. Or flaws in how the system actually enforces those entitlement checks. And when data is accessed, it's usually protected at rest using data protection classes. Default for installed apps is often protected until first user authentication.
Which means the files are encrypted until you unlock your phone for the first time after booting.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It leverages APFS per file encryption. We're talking AES 256 XTS on newer chips like A14 or M1 and later. The keys themselves are derived from the secure enclave's unique hardware ID and something called sealed key protection. Makes them very device-specific.
Tied to the hardware, so stealing the disk and trying to crack it offline is, well, probably not going to work.
Pretty much, yeah. You'd need to attack the secure enclave or the key handling, which is a whole different level of difficulty.
Yeah.
Now, back to macOS and its extra layers, because it can run unsigned code.
Right, those additional protections, what have we got there?
Okay, three main things. First, notarization. That's Apple scanning apps for known malware, even if they're not from the App Store, before they can run.
So a check against a known bad list, essentially.
Kinda, yeah. Then there's XProtect. That's the built-in anti-malware engine in macOS. Signature-based, blocks, and removes known threats.
Like traditional AV, but baked right in.
Exactly. And finally, Gatekeeper. This checks if downloaded software is from a known developer, is notarized by Apple, and hasn't been altered. It also throws up that, are you sure you want to run this prompt the first time?
Notarization, XProtect, Gatekeeper. We need a quick way to remember those. How about NXG?
NXG, I like it. Not bad. Notarization, XProtect, Gatekeeper. The macOS trio.
Speaking of defenses, why did the security researcher bring a ladder to the Apple Store?
I don't know why.
They heard the sandbox was really high.
Oh boy. Okay, moving swiftly on. Blast Door. That's another interesting one, mainly for messages.
Right. Came in with iOS 14, designed to handle incoming message data safely.
Yeah, it isolates the processing of untrusted data, parsing it, transcoding it, validating it in a separate, tightly sandboxed, short-lived process. The goal is to make things like zero-click attacks much harder by handling the risky stuff away from the main processes. Segments known versus unknown senders, too.
Sounds like a complex attack surface in itself, though. All that parsing of untrusted input.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a focus area for researchers. Fuzzing, differential analysis, all that good stuff. And underpinning this entire security posture is the secure boot process.
The chain of trust, starting from the hardware itself.
Exactly. It begins with immutable code in the boot ROM, which verifies the next stage, iBoot, which verifies a kernel, and so on. Everything has to be cryptographically signed by Apple. Helps prevent low-level tampering or trying to load older, vulnerable software. On Macs, it also involves verifying a local policy file. which holds security settings and is signed by the secure enclave.
So from silicon to software, it's checks all the way up. Okay, quick recap then. We've got sandboxing for isolation, code signing for integrity, entitlements for permissions, data protection tied to the secure enclave for data at rest. Then the macOS specific NXG layers, notarization, XProtect, gatekeepers, plus Blastdoor for message safety, and the secure boot foundation.
That pretty much covers the core layers, Apple details. Understanding how they fit together is, well, crucial for our line of work. It tells you where the walls are.
Definitely. And if you want the really deep technical specifics, the full Apple Platform Security Guide is the place to go.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listeners. Given all these layers we've talked about, the hardware roots, the sandboxing, the crypto, the input validation, where do you think the most interesting, perhaps most fruitful ground for security research and vulnerability discovery lies within this ecosystem today? What specific mechanism looks ripest for investigation? Something to chew on.